Hello everyone. Today I'm up at Central Park in Rushville Square on what appears to be a fairly noisy, active day. Well, I want to today spend a few minutes playing in that academic playground where psychologists and theologians get together to ply their wares and to discuss and debate their concepts back and forth. But I don't want to spend too much time there because I can already almost feel you nodding off and getting ready to change the channel and skip to the next. So I don't want to do that much. I mean, anytime I use the word psychology, you think big words. Anytime I think theology, you think, oh, that'll put you to sleep faster than counting in sheep. Well, I don't want to put you to sleep. I don't want to use big words, but I do want to challenge you today with something that has been very challenging to me in my life, and just share that with you. This is a really busy today. This is a short midweek devotion from the Littleton United Methodist Church. Okay, let's stop messing around with theology and sociology and academic playgrounds for a moment, okay? Let me just get practical. What I want to do today is for us to do a really quick, abridged spiritual inventory of how we're doing. Let me begin with, I think I'll put these in levels, okay? So I'll begin with the simplest, level 1. Is it possible that some of you who are listening to me speak today are Christians? You've committed your lives to Christ. You've asked God to forgive you of your sins. You're heaven-bound. But even with that, you're just not really plugged in. You're kind of on the outskirts of Christ's church. You're not growing spiritually the way that you want to grow. Well, if that's the case, it may be because you're isolated. It may be that you've not been mentored in your faith. It may be that you've not spent time rubbing shoulders with other Christians. Christianity is an individual faith, but Christianity is also a communal faith. It's one that we practice together with other people. So however you find it, whether it's at work or whether it's at church or wherever it is, you might need other Christian friends, especially some that have been on the journey a little longer than you. Let's level up just a little bit. It's possible that you're part of a small Bible study. You have some close Christian friends. It's possible that you attend church. It's possible you're on a church board, church committees. You are involved with some of the voting process on those committees and stuff. And yet, you may find yourself frustrated because you just keep bumping your head against the wall all the time, and you get with your friends and you have like a little voting block, and you frustrate everyone with your voting block, and they are frustrated, and they frustrate you by not voting along with your voting block, and it may just seem like it's it's just not worth the hassle. Be kind and say, it's possible you might need a little training. That is, when I was a new Christian, there was a church within an hour's drive of where I was at. I just graduated high school. I knew I wanted to become a pastor. I went to our conference and I said, I need to take that church. It's a little church. Nobody else is doing it. Let me pastor that church. And my church ordination board said, to be called is to be trained. It's not time for you to step in that church yet. If we put you in that church, you could damage that church and that church could damage you. You need to be trained. And it may be that in the areas that you're working in, part of your frustration, and I don't want to get too heavy, but it could be part of your frustration is that you need a little more expertise in some of the areas you're working at. Perhaps you need some seminars on teaching and some training on how to lead your Sunday school classes. Maybe the board needs some training on being on the board. And maybe there's an area with sharing your faith that you need some specialized training. And it may be one of the best things that can be done for you is for you to go to where you can get training, or the church to bring in specialized training to you. I may be stepping on toes now, and it may be starting to get a little scary for me. It may be that you have been a Christian for a long time. You may be a scholar of Scripture. You may be one of the leaders in your church. You might be a pastor. You may have your master's of divinity. You may have a doctoral degree. You may be fully ordained. You may be hitting your stride. You may be exactly what churches are looking for. Someone who is theologically sound, able to preach like crazy, and able to help churches grow and just run everything smoothly. But on the inside, you're dying and you know it. That's not uncommon. That's pretty common for Christians to climb into their faith and hit a wall to where everything starts to feel shallow. It may be that you're about to have a crisis of faith. You're about to become disenchanted with the church as a whole, with faith as a whole. Okay, this sounds terrible, but I'm going to say that may not be the worst thing that could happen to you. Here's my idea. It may be that through stage 1 and stage 2 and stage 3, that you have been outwardly motivated all of your life. You have just, we used to say that rabbit dogs, if you go hunting, hunters will know what I'm talking about, that the mark of a good rabbit beagle is that it's got a bloody tail. It's just wagging its little tail while it's chasing rabbits through the brush. It may be that you've been like that little beagle, that you have responded to pats on the back, that you kind of enjoy, although with humility, the awards that come your way, that you like seeing those numbers run up, and that those things motivate you. But the Christian life is not a life of externals. It's also a life of internals. And it may be that you need to make this huge leap across a huge chasm from an external motivation to an internal motivation. Now, that happens differently for all of us. Often it comes through some sort of crisis by faith, some sort of deep tragedy. I told a young Christian one time that mature Christians are Christians that have suffered. He could not swallow that. He thought that pretty much suffering was a sign of lack of faith, not faith. May I keep going to another level? If you have laid down your ego and cling only to Christ, if you have found a spot in your life where it no longer matters if you get lots of awards and accolades and pats on the back and things to stick on your wall and all of that sort of thing. That it doesn't matter if people think you're the greatest thing that ever lived or they don't know that you ever lived. If you've come to a place where you're at peace with yourself internally, there may be no time in your lives when you have been less interested in an external faith and going out and doing things for others or leading others in leadership. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't, because there probably has never been in your time a time in your life when you were more qualified than you are now to be a leader of others. You see, the Christian life, it may be internally motivated, not by all these awards. There may come a time where we take all the awards we have off the walls and stick them in our desk drawers, kind of out of the way because they no longer matter. But it's not an internal life. It's internally motivated, and there's an internal element to it, but it's also an external life. It's a communal life. It's just as much a communal life now as you're an older Christian than it was when you were first a Christian and first needed to be discipled by those around you. Only now you're in the place where you need to gather people around you. So we may not be at our prime at this stage in life. I mean, not like when you're externally motivated and you're willing to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for somebody to say, attaboy. But at the same time, you have so much to give. And it's not time to sit on a rocking chair yet. I'm about out of steam. I'm about done. So what's next? Sainthood? I don't know. But let me go one more step. Let's say you have gone through this cycle of life. May never reach it. May always be internally or externally motivated. May always find ourselves kind of hot on boards. May always find ourselves not too involved. I mean, maybe not. But let's say we want to add, another step to the end of this. Ever met a Christian that it's a person that's been a Christian for a long, long time? They were just at peace with themselves, and they were at peace with you. You might have some rough edges. You might be a bit of a scoundrel. It may be that you're holding on to a theology that's totally out in left field as far as they're concerned, but they still love you. They still embrace you. They still don't shut you out. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to have your theology on straight. You don't have to, with all your warts, blemishes, and everything, you can just be yourself around them, and they won't waver. They will still be who they are. They will still follow their Lord. They will still care about you, but they will also be an example to you of a life well lived. After the way I started this devotion, it just wouldn't be fair if I didn't throw around some big names and psychological words or something, even if I don't know what they mean. So those of you who have studied psychology probably hear shades of Piaget or Kohlberg or some of the others, Erik Erikson, James Fowler, in what I'm writing. They all work in some sort of form or the other with stage development, whether it's cognitive development or organizational power or morality or ethics and something like that. My favorite of that genre is a lady named Janet Hagberg. If you want to read a little deeper on the kinds of things we're sharing today, Janet Hagberg wrote this book on stages of power within an organization. It works for where you work and also for churches. And it just was a revolutionary book for me. I don't know that I agree with all stage theory, and I don't know that they don't make mistakes or they don't even agree with each other sometimes. But but it worked. It was something that I found practical in my life. Now, Robert Gulick, whom I'm not as familiar with, got together with Janet Hagberg and they wrote a faith-based book called The Critical Journey: Stages in the Life of Faith. And Janet Hagberg's is called Real Power: The Stages of Power in Organizations. Either of those books would be a good read if anything I've said today um, affected you the way that it affected me when I first came across it many years ago. Well, may God bless you and watch over you and take care of you the rest of this week until we're able to meet together again on Sunday or wherever your faith community meets.